Today we're going to learn about propaganda in World War II and why propaganda is so persuasive. So propaganda is biased information intentionally spread to shape public opinion and behavior, and everyone uses it. So regardless of your political affiliation, all politicians will use propaganda um, at some point, whether it is extreme use or not extreme. When you want someone to believe what you want, um, sometimes you use propaganda. Other times you just use methods of rhetoric, which are persuasive. So propaganda contains true, partially true, or blatantly false information. And that's what makes it complicated is then you have to figure out what is true and what isn't. Propaganda may selectively omit information. So you have to pay attention. What is not being said here? What is not being conveyed? Because the information you don't have may be necessary in order for you to make an informed decision. Propaganda tends to simplify complex issues or ideas. Everything in this world is complex. There are so many systems involved, and that's why it's really important to understand the systems and how they intersect and why an issue is so complicated before you come to a decision. And propaganda plays on emotions. So if you're watching an advertisement and you're feeling very emotional, it is probably propaganda made to manipulate you. And you should be asking yourself, why does this advertisement want people to feel this way? What do they want from me? What is their intention or what is their end goal? And then propaganda uses a variety of media, so they'll use symbols, images, words, and music, all of which can play on emotions and decisions. Propaganda may be used to advertise a cause, an organization, a movement, or it can be used to attack opponents. So this is particularly powerful during election years, which seem to happen every 2 years or so in the United States, especially the ads attacking political opponents, which in the political world is called mudslinging. All advertising is propaganda. So some advertising is true, some of it is somewhat true, and some of it is false. So if you watch advertisements on TV, YouTube, Hulu, whatever it is, you're watching propaganda. Uh, However, propaganda can only be used for negative purposes. Um, so sometimes it's just being persuasive, other times it's negative. I mean, there are cases when advertisements are positive, like it is good to brush your teeth, um, but usually propaganda is negative. Propaganda seeks agreement. It wants you to agree with what they're saying. It doesn't want you to argue with reason. So if you're coming up with reasons to argue, that's good. It means you're fighting against just blindly believing whatever you see or read. And propaganda is used to brainwash people so that you don't think for yourself, you just think whatever the talking points are. It works with our conscious and our unconscious, hopes, fears, and desires. So it plays on those things. And it gives permission to a targeted audience to think, speak, and act in a certain way. Like they are entitled to behave a certain way or to have certain beliefs just because they saw this advertisement. So as I mentioned, all advertising is propaganda because propaganda appeals to emotion, not intellect or rational thought, and often contains deception, which is either outright or by omission and has long-term effects. Um, Advertising is biased information intentionally spread, but does not or should not contain deception, and is often used to appeal to intellect or rational thought using persuasion and understanding, producing short-term effects. So that's good advertising, not necessarily propaganda. What does it mean to brainwash? It's the use of isolation, mind clouding techniques, sleep deprivation, and malnutrition to persuade someone completely to change personality, thoughts, or actions. So there's 3 stages: breaking down the self, introducing the possibility of salvation, and rebuilding the self. When you're watching an advertisement, if you're paying attention, you're not talking to someone. So you are kind of isolated. It's not going to sleep deprive you or make you unhealthy, but it will first feed upon your fears, which is kind of like the breaking down of the self. Then it will say why you should believe what they believe, and then it creates an identity for you and the other people who believe the same thing. Many psychologists believe that large-scale brainwashing via the mass media and subliminal messages, for instance, is not possible because the thought process requires isolation and absolute dependence on the subject in order to be effective. It's not just that. It's just not that easy to change a person's core personality and belief system. This may be true for one advertisement, but if you're hearing the same thing year after year, and it's getting more and more extreme, it's going to work. Maybe not the subliminal messages. I don't know how many of those are in advertisements. But I think large-scale brainwashing does work. Okay, so I'm going to go through this first example of a piece of propaganda and analyze it for you guys. And then we will come together as a class and we will do the same for the other ones. So I can tell that this is German. I know that this is Jew in German. So it's going to be the Nazis who created this, and the intended audience are white Germans or Christian Germans. So that's who this audience is for, because this isn't, a picture of a Jew. What is the purpose of this piece of propaganda? So if you look at the Jew here, he has a whip, which in this time period, some Jews still got around on a horse and carriage or a horse and buggy, and so they had the whip for the horse. However, in this case, it's probably used to intimidate because he's tall, he's wearing black and dark clothing, his hair looks unkempt, it looks like he only wants money, and he's holding something that looks like a communist symbol on, I'm guessing, Russia. And so these are all their fears, that a big scary Jew is going to come and take your money, and if you don't give it to him, he's going to try to make you communist and hit you until you give him the money. Those are the fears that they're trying to put out with this picture. And I don't even know what these 2 words mean. So that's just an analysis of the picture of what Hitler wants people to think, not what I think. That's what this advertisement is portraying. What creative techniques were used? We have the contrast of the yellow in the background with the black. So the Jew here really stands out. And the coins kind of match the background as well. We can't see his eyes. It's a caricature because his nose is big as well. Yeah, he's meant to look intimidating. Okay, so with everything, it depends on your background. If you're Jewish, this is extremely insulting, and you know that it's misinformation. If you're a poor person in Germany, you want to blame someone for why you are poor and why you can't find jobs. So this is probably going to be like, man, how come Jews are able to get money but I can't? I hate them. That's what you would be thinking. If you're a wealthier white person or Christian, it kind of depends on your background. You might dislike Jews because they're not Christian and you think that they should follow your religion, or you might think that this is misleading and racist because you have an education. So it really depends on your background how you view this image. The values in this are that it's bad to want money, and there's a stereotype with Jews that they want money, that's all they want. The lifestyle is that you don't want to be Jewish because they're communist, and you don't want to look like them, you don't want to be scary and intimidating. It's basically every negative fear of Jews. That's what they're saying, is like, you don't want to be like this, be like someone else. What is omitted from this message is there's that Jews were only 1% of the population in Germany at the time, so they couldn't control money. They couldn't put other people out of work because they were such a small minority. Um, it is omitted that Jews looked like everyone else. They could have blonde hair, they could be tall, short, fat, thin. Um, they could have big noses or small noses. Like they could look like anyone. Some of them probably were in banking because there were so many laws that prohibited Jews from either owning land or doing this or doing that. And so many Jews did become business owners or bankers or loan officers because that's all they had, because there were so many laws prohibiting them from other positions because of the anti-Semitic laws that have been throughout the ages. So all of those things are omitted from this. The emotions that are intended are fear of the other, in particular fear of Jews, fear of communism, fear of having your money taken, fear of poverty. And of course, when you have all of those fears in one image, you want to scapegoat and blame one group of people for everything. And in this case, Hitler wants you to blame Jews. Cultural context. Again, it's the stereotypes against Jews that are represented here. The cultural context is it was after World War I with the Treaty of Versailles when Germany lost the war. They had high reparations to pay, and so they wanted to blame someone because people were in poverty. They couldn't afford to eat. They couldn't afford their rent. And so this was a really easy way to target a group of people. So, you know, when you first look at this, it's easy for us, hopefully, to shrug it off and say, man, this is a caricature of Jews. It doesn't accurately represent them. It's, horrible. But if your family is hurting right now and you're looking for someone to blame, it can be in an effective way to make you feel afraid and therefore more tempted to act on your anti-Semitic or racist and prejudiced opinions. And that's what's scary when you have propaganda. Like, this is one piece of propaganda. If you saw and heard it everywhere, you would really start to believe it. And so it's really important that we pay attention to advertisements we see, especially ones that are inspiring fear in us, and ask, is this accurate? Is this true? So this is going to be the next piece of propaganda, and we will cover this in class together. And just at the very end, I'm going to read this to you here, and then we'll go over that other piece together. The real danger of propaganda lies when competing voices are silenced, and unchecked propaganda can have negative consequences. Propaganda alone cannot win wars or transform thinking human beings into mindless automatons, which are machines. So it's not just going to be propaganda, but propaganda can inspire people to create laws and others to follow those laws. The Nazis sold more than hate. They promoted an agenda of freedom, unity, and prosperity. But that was at the cost of annihilating an entire group of people. So you really want to pay attention. Who is selling the idea of hate? Who, is promoting these ideas, and is it at a cost that is extremely negative to one group of people? These are important questions that you have to ask yourself for the rest of your life whenever you see something that is trying to persuade you of an idea. This is essential that you keep in mind. We always say we learn history so we don't repeat the past. How do we do that? How do we not repeat the past? We have to think for ourselves, and we have to analyze things even once we graduate from high school.